Hello and welcome to a Humber VR experience, where we'll ask if VR workplaces are ready to take on new students from game and 3D VR development backgrounds. I'm Clement Go, and if you take a look around, we're inside the journalism studio deep inside Humber College's Lakeshore campus at Etobicoke, Ontario. Now, of course, before we start anything, I need to make sure you're ready to turn and look around for the whole story. If you're inside VR, all you have to do is turn with your head and body. Now, looking at this through a computer or phone, just click and hold anywhere on this screen and drag. You'll also be teleported in and out of the studio and through different places. This happens every time you hear this. The interaction we're having right now is inside YouTube's 360 virtual reality platform, which is a part of Ontario's technology industries. Let's take a trip to Humber's North Campus, where a video game programming teacher says some of his students are already preparing to enter a VR workforce.
Zero volts, so there's no electricity flowing through. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Why does it make sense?
If you look to your left, third-year game programming student Samuel Bouchard is guiding me through two of the 3D VR training simulations they've built for the school's electrician and paramedic students. Of course, you're also standing in the middle of the new extended reality lab at Humber College's North Campus in Etobicoke. Go ahead, take a look around.
Not real like that. Does that mean...
No, let's grab the red wire. Like literally the red wire that's plugged in the machine.
Right, sorry.
Not a problem.
Okay.
A little higher up, really from the tip. There you go. So it's really, really angry because you're grabbing the live wire.
Yep.
If you put it back in where you grabbed it,
Oof.
that's
And
something you do not...
Probably just died.
Yeah, that's something you do not want to do.
Yeah.
But
let her know that looks super in need of medical treatment.
Yep, so we're going to use a clipboard and we're going to actually do triage. In this particular simulation, we don't do actual treatment.
Yes.
It's just making sure that the people that do require immediate assistance will get it first.
So we can identify it.
Exactly. So you can
Let's move
start
on.
with very basic questions, or
We're here at Humber's North Campus, where game programming coordinator and Professor Umer Noor is here to join us.
Yeah, this room is actually called the visualization studio, and you see there's this massive screen to one side. So the kind of idea of this room is that when the students and faculty come up with a solution and they want to present it to the client, they can bring their work here and show it on the big screen. And you're right, we've done a few VR presentations here as well, where the person can be putting on the headset, but the audience at the back can actually see what the person's looking at through their eyes.
How exactly has virtual reality changed the way your students have been picking up job skills within their years here?
Yeah, it's made a big change to where game programming students end up. Because typically when they join our program, they want to make games. But with how many people are excited about VR outside of the game industry, we see people in training, education, film and TV. So a lot of spaces which aren't traditionally game, but they use the game technology. They use the technology to simulate an area in 3D that has like lighting and gravity and the kind of stuff you would see in a game. So we've actually introduced them more directly to the uses of VR in especially one of our courses, where they learn this game engine called Unity. And a game engine is just a way to kind of simulate a 3D world. So over the years, I've had the privilege to speak to other professors from other institutes, and yeah, I think you really need to know the fundamentals to do well in VR, and we're all focused on that anyway. Like, are you able to program? Do you know how to problem solve? Can you debug? Can you work with other people, with artists and designers? So I think that as long as those...
Welcome back. In a 2017 study called Pulse on VR, The Canadian Film Centre and Government of Ontario stated the province was seeing a rise from 2014 in the largest amount of full-time VR creators, with over $7.1 billion being invested for jobs and projects going towards 2020. Now, guess how many jobs are predicted to come from headsets like the ones here? Well, according to the Information and Communications Technology Council, it's 44,000 people that are being needed in Ontario alone by 2021. Our next stop is in Markham, and waiting for you there is the lead VR developer of CADmech Design. Over here in places like Markham, companies like CADmech Design Incorporated use VR technology to create the experiences. Now, of course, I want you to meet Victor, and I want you to tell me more about what kinds of job skills have to go towards your position.
Basically what we've built is some applications for these operators to basically learn how to use the machine in virtual reality. So things like having their virtual hands push buttons and showcase how the procedure of operating on this machine is done so that they can do it in a safe environment and then at the same time do it over and over again without bogging up the actual manufacturing line and having someone teach them that process. They can just do it in virtual reality and learn it through that. VR is it's a different world. That's why I mean typical game programmers are good to a good segue into VR. But because I come from the enterprise world, we worked with game programmers in the past, and they didn't fit well in the team mainly because they just didn't have the right understanding of the application, right? So most of the time they would have to lean on another individual in terms of like an engineer to understand like, okay, why are we building it like this? Why are we, what are we doing? Like, well, why is it like this? But actually one of our developers is from Seneca College, and he did a programming degree in that. And it's still lacking, I would say. It's lacking the applications. Like I keep saying that over and over again. You can be really good at programming and just be the best programmer ever, but if you don't understand what your end user is using it for, the program might be built in a way that doesn't make sense, right? And that's where I think it's more of real world applications and being out there and understanding what people are doing on a day-to-day.
Truong is among other VR employees working with the technology next to a variety of companies who have developed video games and theme park experiences. Our next destination takes us just minutes away from this studio, where former Seneca College game art and animation instructor is looking to show us the inside of his VR game company called Seed Interactive. He's also hired junior staff made of students and young designers looking to start a career in virtual reality creation. Let's see what's over there. Now we're joined here by Daniel Stopnicki from Seed Interactive. Now I'm very curious to know, obviously we teleported into a whole different warehouse in Etobicoke. And could you tell me more about what we're being surrounded with?
Yeah, sure. This is a space that we share with Quantum Capture, and right around us here is a motion cap rig. So these are OptiTrack cameras which use infrared light to track the human body. So if I was doing a production in here, it'd be full of a lot of little dots like you see in the movies. We're able to capture that motion and use it in film and video games. Far off in the distance, you'll see a camera rig. There is, I think, over 100 cameras in that rig, and it's a process called photogrammetry, which allows you to take various photographs of a body, an object, and then draw 3D data.
What are some of the skills that are expected for, let's say, students interning here?
It really depends whether or not your background is as a 3D artist or as a programmer. It's very left brain, right brain, and most students that study will choose one or the other. Both of those are critical components of making any kind of visual gaming experience.
How well do you think Ontario colleges are doing to teach their students and to prepare them for a career one day in virtual reality?
I think they're all quite good. I've taught at 4 or 5 of them in the city. They're all comparable in terms of the background. The challenge for me, particularly on the art side, is not so much the technical skills as it is the raw art skills. And that's something that's often overlooked by students when making a choice of a college or even in the focus of their education, which is you can know where all the buttons are, but I still will not hire you to produce art because that becomes a soft skill. It becomes an eye, a a certain look, a certain understanding of what is appealing, and then how to use the tools to generate that. So
We're joined here with Dawn Marie Warren, a Humber VR technologist who's actually been a part of the institution for more than 20 years, seeing technology come and go. What are a student's chances of starting their own careers working with virtual reality and building it as soon as they get out of school?
We created a team of six different individuals. In short order, they were coming up on their second and moving into their third year. By the time they graduated, that team actually ended up starting their own business as soon as they were finished. They were being scooped up very quickly by folks in the industry. They are still currently running their business, doing individual work for different grants and whatnot through the government. They've landed some excellent opportunities. So possible, absolutely, and it's a fact. Another avenue, create your own business. As such, others have, and successfully, I might add. Another avenue is to look at, there will be this shift happening in industry, like the larger companies, Honeywell and Dell and all the rest of them, Google, they already are developing. They have jobs available for this kind of work.
We're joined here with Mark Ihnat, Director of Digital Learning, who also works with virtual reality projects and directs different teams towards creating experiences for the college. And I'm curious to know, what are a student's chances of joining a job in the VR workforce in 2020?
Wow. I think they're pretty good. I mean, I can tell you that from experience in the sense that our VR team is all students except for, we have one staff member who oversees that group. But we lose our students very frequently because they are getting jobs in the VR world. So that demand is really high, very pressing. I think the benefit for our students is that they are learning stuff that's relatively cutting edge, relatively bleeding edge. It's always hard to be on the bleeding edge, but it's up there, it's close. And so that's exactly what employers are looking for. And especially when employers, I would argue, don't know exactly what they want a jack of all trades type of student. So if they can do the coding side, maybe even databases and virtual reality builds, you've got a real gem. You don't necessarily have to go to the big players and join a VR company with 40, 50, 60 other coders and be one of many sitting in a cubicle. If you're good enough, you can freelance your way into your own sort of independent business and really kind of establish yourself. And we've seen that already with our students just in the last 2 years.
And in terms of VR, now going even deeper into Humber's North Campus in Etobicoke, we're in the institution's own version of a virtual reality lab, similar to a couple you've seen so far. And behind you is Dustin Brown, a second-year game programming student who's currently developing experiences with the school and in using new technologies like the one I'm wearing for different, more immersive experiences for students. Now, thank you so much for joining us, Dustin.
My pleasure.
And I'm very curious to know, right off the bat, going into the middle of your program, how well are Ontario colleges preparing students like you to start some careers in the new technology?
I'd say this one's doing quite well. So obviously we were given this opportunity, and I'm grateful that Humber has this opportunity. It's a heck of a lot of fun, and we're learning a lot doing it. But also just as a student, a lot of our projects as of second year, we've already made VR projects in classes, and more to come in third. So that is a haptic vest. Inside of it are 8 motors. I believe it's 2 on the shoulders, 4 in the back, 2 on the hips. Its purpose is to provide another form of feedback when you are in virtual reality. In our case, one of the simulations we use it for is the electrician simulation, where apprentice electricians are trained to do jobs they might not have a chance to do in their apprenticeship. This vest comes in handy because if they do something that would electrocute themselves, we buzz all the motors all at once, really let them know they've done something wrong, really let them know that they've probably just killed themselves in real life.
And in finding work for virtual reality, is it mostly having to go out to find work, or is it mostly having work come to you?
It depends. Your average freelance developer will have to go out to find work. We're lucky here at the Humber VR team because a lot of work comes to us. We go places to show off what we're making. We were at EGLX earlier last year. We were at the opening of one of the buildings here last year. And through those sorts of opportunities, a lot of work, a lot of business cards came to us asking us to work on their projects.
Are you finding it hard or easy to have a job stability in virtual reality?
Oh, it's easy. Yeah, no, once, if you can program in VR and you get a job in VR, odds are people are going to want to keep you around. It's not much more difficult than programming a regular game. There are different factors you need to consider for sure as far as user interface and user control goes. But since it is a new technology that a lot of companies are trying to get on board with, VR developers will find a job and they'll be able to keep it for sure.
And based on what you've seen around you, tools mentioned like the Unreal and Unity engines are the basis for modeling VR worlds. So what other job challenges are there for new college graduates? We'll ask the head designers of Toronto VR game company Dark Slope Studios for answers. We're joined here by Ben Unsworth, the co-founder of Dark Slope Studios. Where exactly did we teleport to? Where we're standing right now?
Right now you are standing in the center of our 60 by 30 foot motion tracking volume. We do a lot of mocap performance here, as well as you can see in front of you, some VR gameplay testing. These guys are testing out one of our recent game releases called Scary Girl, and using the HP Reverb and HPZ backpacks. And yeah, this is a very multi-purpose space for mocap, VR gaming, and community meetups.
And since last year, the studio also received $1.5 million in funding towards projects like Scary Girl and Ready, Set, Dance. And I'm curious to know as well, how has the team kind of grown since then?
We've added quite a few people. We have over 20 people in the studio here. We also have another art studio in Pune, India, outside of Mumbai, that we work with quite a lot. We have built out both our Unreal C++ developers as well as our technical artists that work inside the engine, not to mention more traditional 3D art skills such as our Maya modelers, our substance designers, and our riggers, animator riggers, and our animators. Biggest needed skill sets and hardest to find is around the game engine. There's multiple engines out there. Unity and Unreal are the sort of two leading ones. We actually have decided to focus on Unreal, and we're finding in the market that's actually one of the harder to find skill sets, just because it hasn't been around in a free or accessible option for very long. However,
Right now, you're standing in the middle of a game test as part of Dark Slope Studios' VR meetups. Go ahead, take a look around. Tonight, the players around you are trying out Slugterra, an arena-based shoot-'em-up which is also location-based, like the large motion capture studio we were in with Ben Unsworth earlier. Let's move on. Welcome to the offices of Ontario Creates, an agency of the Government of Ontario researching the interactive digital media industry in the province. Sitting across from you is Chris Dunn, consultant for industry initiatives. I spoke to him about the agency's research into the state of virtual reality workplaces in 2020. Let's take a listen. And for studios and companies working with virtual reality, how do you think the growth has been since 2015 to now in terms of applicants coming in?
There was, as I said before, there was a bit of an uptick in VR type of content projects that were coming in initially, and that's started to decline a little bit. It's kind of leveling out, I think. People are still trying to figure out where VR will sit within the overall landscape of the IDM sector. The budgets are steadily increasing. The VR technology is the hardware, the technology is decreasing in cost, but production costs are rising. So the production costs are getting much more kind of fulsome. The important thing to kind of keep in mind is if the platform that you're developing for is that the target audience that is wanting that content on that platform, right? So that's a consideration that's taken into account. So the developers typically would know where their audience are and which platforms they're using and utilizing. Furious Seas was a great success story at GDC in 2018, but there's lots of great VR content creators in the province. Secret Location is one of them, and they've come out with a game called Transpose, which is really interesting, VR immersive VR game. And then you also mentioned Dark Slope Studios as well. So Scary Girl, Mission Maybe is one of their location-based, large location-based free roam VR, which is really interesting and holds a lot of potential.
In general, how's the industry looking now for people looking to transition from school and into a VR studio now?
Well, we see a number of new and emerging studios coming up. So, either people that are coming out of post-secondary education institutions, or people that are transitioning out of a different sector and kind of moving into this space. So I believe it's vibrant. I think it's very kind of healthy. We've noticed with our program specifically, there's a requirement that needs to be met in that in order to be eligible, you have to have at least 3 years of full-time experience working in the interactive digital media space, so creating digital content projects. And if you don't meet that requirement, then unfortunately you're not eligible to come into the program. But recognizing that that's a barrier for some.
Whew. Welcome back, and thank you for being here at the studio in Etobicoke. When you finish this video, you'll most likely go back into a world where VR workplaces like the ones in Ontario are also changing the way college students are training in 3D VR design programs. We spoke to some teachers, employers, and other VR experts about the technology's impact for current design jobs. Each studio also gave us ideas of what students in game and 3D VR design programs could expect to see even more as graduates continue rolling out in the next few years. For another Humber VR experience, I'm Clements Go, and thank you for joining us.